And that is the difference between these two following statements, which is very important. I am not enough, or I am not good enough, and I am not being good enough. There's a very big difference between who you are and how you're being. Who you are and how you're being. This is the difference between your worthiness and how you are choosing to be. You're listening to the Everyday Legends podcast, the show that is dedicated to championing everyday men and supporting you in getting more from life, love, and the everyday. I'm your host, Mike Campbell, and the aim of this podcast is pretty simple: to support you in building rock-solid foundations, legendary integrity, and kick-ass relationships with plenty of stories, a load of lessons, and a solid dose of some loving straight talk. So let's get started. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Everyday Legends podcast. I'm your host, Mike Campbell, and today it's just me. It's me. I'm bringing you a solo episode, and I'm going to cut to the heart of this little yet massive thing called self-worth. Here's a question that I get and see floating around a lot in my coaching world and social media, questions that kind of come at me, and it's along the lines of this. How do I improve my sense of self-worth? How do I build self-worth? How do I develop self-worth? And it's the kind of thing that comes through in many, many forms. Guys, and how they struggle with self-worth. And I get a lot of guys in my coaching program, the Everyday Legends Academy, the different iterations of that, Development Academy, and now into, our deep inner circle in the Zeus inner circle. These things still come out. For a bit of context for you guys listening who aren't in that world, we might explore generally, let's call it in personal development, things like sabotage, your inner critic, all these kind of things. The language, and there's a lot of, correlation there. The language that we use in the world of the ELA, or the Everyday Legends Academy, is your villain. And your villain, in a very simple sense, is that piece of you. I'm gonna go two levels for you on it here, that fights against you, that keeps you stuck, small, rotating, looping, fucking floundering in old patterns that are defeating, the sabotaging, that don't serve us. And they fight against, let's call it your truest, highest self, the hero that is in there for you. But the idea with the villain is not something that we want to fuck him off. We actually want to understand him, because that part of us is formed through our upbringing, our quote wounds, those parts, those pieces of our life where we, generally speaking, broadly speaking, experience some unpleasant shit, and we form some beliefs about ourselves and the world around us to try and prevent those things from happening again, both those events and the feelings that resulted in us. And so that forms kind of a belief about ourselves, beliefs about the world around us. And then that kind of forms a deep truth about ourselves. And that is, in the term of ELA, we call your villain. Your villain becomes the set of beliefs and behaviors to try and prevent those things from happening again. And it means, and we've talked about this in the podcast before, I end up being driven by avoiding those things from happening again, those situations, those feelings, and ultimately it's fear driven. It's, I don't want that to happen again. Now, there's a lot in there for villains, but what is very, very common for a lot of men, in my quick summation, that sits at the root of our villain is this thing around self-worth, this thing around enoughness. I am not enough. I am not good enough. I do not deserve love. I am unlovable. When I love people, they abandon me. All these things, there's so many ways in which they come about and then play out. And I'm going to touch on them in a moment. Some of the examples that we see quite often in ELA, that underlying a lot of this stuff is our worthiness. Now, here's the thing that I want to touch on before we get into that. And that is, we often see something going on in our life and we want to change it. I want different results. And if we are clever, we might get to the behaviors that we need to change. Great. But just changing behaviors is never, ever enough. It's not enough. Most people know behaviors that need to change. Even if we don't know, new behaviors won't do it if the foundation is flimsy, right? So I'll give you a quick example. It's safe to say most people would love to be fit and healthy, right? Have a good physique thereabouts, fit and healthy. You can add a bunch of other shit to that, but let's just go there in a simple sense. So what do they got to do? Eat well and exercise. Like, that's really it. Watch the amount of food that you eat relative to the amount you output, move your body regularly, get some rest. That's it. There's a lot of nuance in there. Holy shit, is there nuance? But that's the gist. So why the fuck don't most people do it? Just saying eat well, eat less, maybe, exercise more is not enough. It's so oversimplistic. It's then that kind of talking that gets people into believing I'm just not disciplined enough. I just don't have, the right kind of discipline or motivation or willpower. No, it's that you've got some deeper underlying things going on with you and your belief about yourself and how you treat yourself and your relationship with yourself. And often that you don't believe that you are worthy of or you deserve to have love, belonging, a healthy body, whatever it is, to that example. And so how that plays out for a lot of us and our villain's behaviors, right? The villain is really the result of kind of our original woundings, those unmet needs, where we form this big belief about ourselves and our worthiness. And so the kinds of examples that I see playing out for men generally, but also in the world of ELA, is one of this so common pattern of always being super, super hard on ourselves. This like setting a really, really high, unrealistic expectation that I can never meet because I feel like I should be that, capable and I should be able to do that. And all these shoulding all over the self, all over our world and ourselves means that I can only be okay with myself and feel like I have worth or value if I am capable of all of these things. It looks like never allowing ease. It looks like constantly having to prove oneself, to achieve, to perform, to have any semblance of worth, right? I need to be achieving all the time. I need to be performing all the time. I need to prove myself to others. It's all externally based, but that mode never really gets us to where we want because it's all external. It also looks like this very common story of life looks good on the outside, but underneath it's not really. I'm not happy. I'm struggling, right? I feel like I don't deserve what I've got on the outside, and all of that has been driven by another idea of what would have me be a man of worth. Right? It's never enough because deep down, I'm not enough, or I struggle with the idea that I am. It looks like sabotaging ourselves all over the show, from work to career to friendships to relationships, most definitely, right? To fitness, as I said before. But in relationships, that's a huge one, right? Because I don't deserve them, because I'm not good enough for them, I don't deserve to be happy, or a belief that, I might be abandoned, or that I'm not lovable, all these things. And then enter something that's really, really common, and that is this attachment that we have, that my worth depends on my net worth, the amount of money I have, my bank balance, on my muscles, my looks, my cock, my achievements, my job, my status. The moment that I realized that my worth is not any of those things, holy shit, was the moment I felt free. I felt free. So here's one of the things that I want to describe, and I end up talking about this a fair bit in the ELA community, for guys that are struggling with this idea of worth and how we confuse worth and value, which I'll touch on in a moment, but also how we get so stuck in the experiences that we've been through, in all of the beliefs that we have formed and continue to reinforce throughout our lives that say to us, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy of fill in the blank, or something to that effect. It might not be those exact words for you, but how can I know that I have worth? How if I don't have this, or if I haven't reached this, or I haven't made that accomplished yet, or I haven't got that amount of money in the bank, or I haven't got a relationship yet, or fill in the blank for any number of conditions that you put around it, how can I know it? So here is something that you might hear in the world of personal development, but perhaps hasn't really been explained. And I'm going to go in and do my best to explain it from my point of view that I think has truth to it and really works. And that is this: your worth just is. It's inherent as a person, right? So what the fuck does that mean? Like, okay, yeah, and but some people, worth more than others, or that person's definitely not worthy of XYZ because he's a piece of shit or whatever. No, your worth as a human just is. So what I want to do is I want to invite you back to, let's call it, the fucking longest time of human history before the agricultural age. Generally speaking, all right, I'm going to go generally speaking on these kind of things. Humans evolved in small tribal communities. We evolved in small tribal communities. We evolved to be community-based creatures. Community-based creatures. And what that meant was quite a few things. But one, what it meant was that survival of the tribe right? And we can use any word you want, community, whatever. I'm going to use tribe in this sense. The survival of that tribe was dependent on all of its individuals. And so one of the pieces that speaks to is this: everyone that was born into that community had a purpose, had a part to play. Might have had many purposes, not to confuse an idea that we have in social and personal development that you have one giant purpose in this world, because I think that's a big misnomer and it's very misleading and sets up a giant expectation, especially in this conversation. If someone feels that they haven't met that purpose or don't know what it is, they have no worth. Everyone has a part and parts to play in the community, right, in that tribe. And so what that means is you inherently have worth because you were born into that. And so here's one of the pieces that is usually connected to worth, and that is, I'm not worthy of love and belonging. And I'm going to touch on a quote from Francis Weller soon that will help us with this. I'm not worthy of love and belonging. And so what Francis Weller says is we seem to often be striving for belonging, seeking belonging. At some point, we have to be a place of welcome. So what will happen when we have this deeper underlying belief about ourselves, that we're not worthy, that we're not good enough, that we don't deserve love and happiness and belonging, etc., is I will go through my life trying to seek a semblance of that from the outside world, from approval, from validation, from relationships and love and quick sex and being wanted, from job and status and money and dick size and muscles and all the things. I'm chasing a sense of belonging. Our job as humans is to know that inherently we have worth, i.e., inherently you belong. Because you were born into, quote, the tribe, you belong. You have a part to play. Not in that moment as an infant, but you still have worth. Because if you don't belong, one, you don't survive, right? So there is an inherent need to have that reinforced and to know it, but to go chasing it ineffectively never gets us to the place we want to go to. So my invitation to you is to know that you belong, is to know that you have worth because you were born. Right now, as we grow, if you think about back to this biggest part of human evolution, as you grow, you become a person. You start to figure out who you are, what parts you can play in the community. You learn your strengths, you learn skills, and you learn how to be the best you can, and you learn how you can have your part and your place in the tribe, so you can be a useful member of the tribe, so that you can bring what is yours to bring. Now, you might not be as a good a hunter as old, Steve over here, but maybe you also, one, that doesn't mean you don't have worth. It means that you have a different value as hunters, but you might bring different values somewhere else. But your worth as a person, your belonging, your worthiness of belonging and love does not change. Everyone belongs. Everyone is worthy of being in that tribe purely because you were born into it. Therefore, you have part to play. I want to really reinforce this for you. So part of the reason I say this is because for me, I think it's a beautiful way to really get that you are worthy of love and belonging, that you have a place and a part to play. And what we then get to do is we get to separate the value that you bring to the world is different to your worth. Your worth just is. Your value is reflected in who you choose to be, the values you execute on, therefore the character you have, and therefore the value that you bring to the world. And so what men are often doing is they're confusing the value that I bring here with the worth that I have. Your worth just is. Your value doesn't actually have to have a judgment on it. You are more valuable to some people than others. It doesn't change your worthiness as a person. The value you have to your company does not determine your worth in terms of love and belonging. Who you choose to be is what is fundamental to the value that you bring to the world. That's a choice that you have at every moment. So here's a little quote that I want to share, and that's, I can't credit it. Your values determine your character, and your character determines your value. And so one of the things that speaks to is this: if you want to really understand and your value and have value, live your values. Because that determines your character, who you are. That's choices that you have every fucking moment of every day. So then I get that question. Okay, so how do I improve my sense of self-worth? Well, first of all, to the previous explanation, you choose to know it. You know that because I was born into this world, I am worthy of love and belonging. But that doesn't mean you just don't do anything. Be a valuable human. But the reason a lot of people won't step into value or won't connect to the value they have is because they still don't believe they're worthy of love and belonging, and they're trying to prove it. So you actually get to give yourself permission, gentlemen, to believe it despite your history, the shit that you've been through, the trauma, the experiences, right? People potentially indicating it or maybe conveying it to you, even maybe hearing it explicitly. You are worthless. Just because someone said that, that does not mean that you are worthless. It means that that person decided to be a piece of shit and unkind human in that occasion, or maybe many occasions. Part of the work is to undo that. The extension of that being, despite you then believing that you don't have worth, that you're not good enough. Choose to know it and then act it. Allow yourself to know that if you act as a man who knows his worth, if you act that way despite what you believe about yourself now, you can become it, you can develop it, you can know it more, right? So if you are portraying a man who has worth, then choose to simply know, I have worth, and I'm going to give myself the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to act in a way that shows self-respect, right? If you want to build esteem, you have to be esteemable. Do things that actually show, I believe that I am good enough and I have worth. Even if I don't believe it now, I'm going to act that way and watch what happens. Now, here's the other really, really important piece in this. It's all good for me to give you strategy. Do that, do that. We have to also get down to the root of where this belief was formed for you. We've got to undo the work that created this belief and those beliefs and stories that you have about yourself in the first place. Where you learnt that you aren't good enough, where you learnt that you don't deserve love, where you learnt that you don't deserve happiness or belonging or ease or whatever it is. And that there is where most of the work lies for most men. That is a big chunk of the work that we do in our ELA. In a simple sense, I'm very, very much condensing it. Where did you learn, whatever your deepest truth that you've been running underneath the surface about yourself? I'm not good enough. I'm not lovable. I don't deserve love. You know, people abandon me if I get close to them, whatever it is. Where and how did you learn that about yourself? What feeling did you experience in that moment you've basically been trying to avoid your whole life? How can we sit in that feeling and know that you won't die, and actually you can be stronger than that feeling and you can handle it? And so that we can then look at those events that formed that belief about yourself and start to reframe them and see them in a different way. You know, if you believe that you weren't good enough for love because your dad was never around, maybe it's not that he didn't love you, but it's that he was doing his best to show he loved you by working all the time. Or he didn't have the best role models for love and relationships, so he didn't stick around because he was terrified of being a father and what that meant for him, and he thought, fuck, I'll be a failure, so I'll leave so I don't fuck this kid up. We can actually reframe these things to something that are more true, because remember, there's the thing that happens, and there's the story and interpretation and meaning that we give to it. And that is often what is absolutely cock-blocking us when it comes to our worthiness or belief about our worthiness. That is a big, big piece of the work that we do. By the way, in the Everyday Legends Academy, hey, if you want to explore that, reach out. We can explore it. There's always opportunities to explore Everyday Legends Academy, the Development Academy. And if you want to go deep and you want to run hard and close with me, then the Zeus Inner Circle is there. And that word Zeus, let's transition into that. Then I will often get questions of like, okay, Mike, so then what about you? How do you know your worth? And it's like, well, I just explained it. Okay, so that thing, yeah. But also I differentiate worth from value. I know that I am worthy of love and belonging. I know that I have inherent worth because, play back what I just spoke to. My value differs. The value that I bring to the world is different from my worth. That is in who I choose to be and how I choose to be. And those are choices, as I said before, that I have all the time. All the time. So then there's this term that I connect to very strongly. I spoke about it in other episodes, and it's called Zeus energy. It's something that I took from the book Iron John when I first read that, I don't know, maybe about 10 years ago. And Zeus energy is a term that the ancient Greeks used, and they described it as intelligence, which, by the way, I expand, let's call it, to mean an open and curious mind. And the reason I do that is because intelligence can be one of those things that a lot of men can think they have a story around, well, I'm not intelligent, or I struggle with, intellectual things. That's not really what we mean here. I think what we mean by intelligence is someone who is willing to be curious and open to new ideas and learn. Anyone can access that. So an open and curious mind, robust health, compassionate decisiveness, goodwill, and generous leadership. And they saw that as male authority accepted for the sake of the community. And so to me, that is a North Star, something that I can strive to be at all times. And when it comes to the world of ELA and the work that I do with men, that is the journey that I'm taking men on. That is where I'm wanting to take them. That is a choice that I have every moment to embody that kind of Zeus energy, or the term that I like to phrase it as now. We often have this idea in men around BDE, big dick energy. And it, again, actually speaking and continuing this idea that if you have a big dick, then you can have energy. Yeah, I've got fucking energy. I've got this way of being, this way about myself, because I don't have to worry about anything because I've got a big dick. Like the size of your dick matters. No, it doesn't. Who you are matters. So my invitation to you listening right now is, if this idea of Zeus energy lands for you, then choose to step into big Zeus energy. See how that rolls for you. But this idea that is accepted for the sake of the community, what that means is that I have worth, I know it, and I can choose to be myself for those around me and for the betterment of the men and the people around me. What that requires of me is that it needs me to know in my bones that I am enough, that I have value, so that I don't show up needing reassurance and validation. But actually knowing that allows me to be more powerful, to bring my value to others, because it's not conditional. It's not weakened by my disbelief that maybe I'm not worthy or deserving of having a place, of being loved, of belonging, in my chosen tribe. This invites me to operate at a different level. I don't have unnecessary capacity given to proving my worth, to chasing the validation from others, to reassure me that I am good enough, that I am lovable, that I am fill in the blank, because that's what's happening there. And so when I've formed this new inner circle, the Zeus inner circle, that is taking these men to the embodiment of Zeus energy, of big Zeus energy, and whatever that means for them. Because I think that is something that every man can grasp onto and is capable of for himself, and therefore for how he is in the world, despite the remarkable and beautiful breadth of individuality amongst men. An open and curious mind, robust health, compassionate decisiveness, goodwill, and generous leadership. That authority accepted for the sake of the community. I will be my best so others can too. And what that invites us to do, again, is differentiate between worth and value. As I said before, values will determine your character, and your character determines your value, who you choose to be. If you want to have more value in the world, get fucking clear on your values, brother, and live them. But here's one of the pieces that we also explore in ELA, and this might need some deeper work. So again, if you want to work on it, come and ask me. What we often see when we start to look at our values is that we've inherited a bunch of values because of what was heavy and impressed upon us in our upbringing, in our family unit, the culture, the society, that we grew up in. And a lot of our values initially will be villain-led, which is to say, when we look at what you value, the simplest way to, first of all, establish it is, what have you been valuing? And where we go next is, where do you spend your time, energy, and money? That'll tell us what you have been valuing. And where that might be villain-led is that it's been led by your wounds and your previously unmet needs. So I might be valuing more money. I might be valuing more financial security. I might be valuing time at work. I might be valuing achieving, proving myself, claiming and creating more status and, a sense of power externally. So for my lack of power within. Those are common things amongst many, many others. And so I might be valuing people pleasing. I might be valuing avoiding conflict. I might be valuing the opinions of others over my own. And so really the work in connecting to your values is figuring that shit out, shaking it off, getting away from it to all the previous points, and choosing what is your highest self, that Zeus energy version of you value. Well, then fucking be that, brother, because that will determine who you are and the value that you bring to the world. And so that's my invitation into Big Zeus energy, being a place of welcome for all of me. And so I'm going to bring you back to that quote from Francis Weller. We always seem to be searching for belonging. At some point, we have to be a place of welcome. Right? When I have not taken care of my villains and my unmet needs, the things that I missed out on in my younger years, growing up, developing, quote, my wounds, which form my villains, then I will go out into the world trying to prove my worth, trying to seek approval and validation and reassurance that I am enough, that I am worthy of love and belonging, etc. Fill in the blanks. And if we're all doing that, no one is fully showing up, one, as their best, two, for others in the way that we can. And so we have a tribe, if we come back to this idea, that is a bunch of individuals not knowing that they belong and therefore not being the best that they can for the community. And so the community suffers. The survival of the tribe, the expansion of the tribe needs me to know. And so what that invitation is that at some point I have to let go of chasing belonging and fucking know it in my bones that I belong, that I am worthy, that I am enough, so that I can actually be a place of welcome for others. So that I can be an invitation, an example for others to know that they belong too. So that we can step into being our best, Big Zeus energy. Being a place of welcome invites me to be a place of welcome for all of myself. Self-acceptance, knowing that I belong, that I'm a human, that I have flaws and foibles and all these other imperfections. Beautiful. That's part of being a human. And I get to be a work in progress and bring more value to my own life and the life of the lives of those around me. Then people see that and they can choose to get past their shit and step into that too. And then, wow, things can shift on a community level, at a broad level. That for me is human evolution in large part. And where we are now, lacking so much of that. Men showing up, needing the world around us to validate, to prove, to remind, to convince, to reassure that you're enough, bro. And we do that in so many ways, chasing power, money, status externally for that lack of power within. Chasing a sense of security externally for my insecurities. Your work is to be secure because you are enough. So that you can stop putting all that fucking energy into trying to create that reminder, that convincing, that reassurance, and just be it. And then watch what happens in your life as you show up. That is the invitation to Big Zeus energy, being a place of welcome for all of me and for others to feel safe to be themselves. Being a place of welcome means that you are safe, you are welcome to be yourself without that constant reassurance, the need for constant reassurance, so that you can know you belong. And therefore, drop all that energy that goes to the chasing of reassurance, the convincing of your worth. That energy can then be put into the betterment of the lives of those around you and your community. So here's another piece that I want to touch on as we come to the conclusion of this conversation. Sometimes you aren't enough. Sometimes you're not good enough. And so here's what I want to explain, the difference between some people. One person might think, and let's go to any relationship, but a romantic relationship is where we often have big hang-ups around this. One person might think that you are, quote, not good enough or not enough for them. But that doesn't speak to your worth, right? That you are not more or less worthy of love and belonging, simply that you don't match that person. You're not the right person for me, really, is what they're saying in that. Now, it could be another little difference, and that is the difference between these two following statements, which is very important. I am not enough, or I am not good enough, and I am not being good enough. There's a very big difference between who you are and how you're being. Who you are and how you're being. This is the difference between your worthiness and how you are choosing to be. And so you might not be being good enough for someone because they have a standard of what they want and who they want to have in their life and the types of and the level of relating that they want. And if you are acting in low value behaviors, then it can be a very simple thing that you're not being good enough for that person. But that doesn't mean that you are more or less worthy of love and belonging. And so we often confuse not being competent enough at something or not acting in a way with our worth. You can be not good enough in something or for something, right? A job, or even not being good enough for a standard that someone has set for what they want in relationships. But that doesn't mean that you aren't enough. It means that you have work to do to improve if you want that thing. If you think I'm not good enough for this job, do you have the skills for it? If not, what skills do you need to gain? You can remove your worthiness from your competency. Because remember, your worth just is. Your worth just is. And this will anchor for you when you choose to accept yourself, all of yourself, and be a place of welcome for you, for all of you, so that you can stop needing the world to continually convince you, remind you, or reassure you that you belong, that you are good enough, that you are worthy of love and belonging in a happy life, that you deserve to be happy, that you deserve ease. And then you can start showing up in that security, right? You can be secure in the knowledge that through birth you belong. And go to work on where all these insecurities has formed, so you can work on them and secure them, so that you can then invite others to see that in themselves and to be that for themselves and those around you, around them. So my invitation, gentlemen, to you is to reflect on this, to explore this for yourself, where this shows up in your life for you, and do something about it. Be a man of worth. Choose to know that, and then choose to live your values and actually be a man of high value. I want to hear how this conversation has landed for you, including all of your struggles and challenges to understand this historically in your life, to allow yourself to believe this, or the conditions that you've had in the way of you being worthy and having worth, deserving happiness and love and belonging and all those things. Until you voice them, you can't challenge them. It means that they still have power over you. And you will turn and twist yourself in knots to try and get around that. You don't get around it, you go through it. Gentlemen, locate your balls and go through the shit that challenges you. You can do that. You are worthy of living on the other side of that shit. Tell me what actions you take. Share this with a man that you know may need this message, that his fucking life could depend on hearing this message and making some shifts within himself and then for himself. I trust that you get something from this. Maybe save this one, come back to it, revisit it, take notes. Remember, don't just listen to this stuff. Learn it, implement it, embody it. Step into that big Zeus energy. I've been your host, Mike Campbell. Thanks for joining me. Until next time, big Zeus energy. It's yours. Fucking go. You've been listening to the Everyday Legends podcast, the show that is dedicated to championing everyday men and supporting you in getting more from life, love, and the everyday. If this podcast has benefited you, if you enjoyed this, then my request, my invitation is to share this with a man that you think will also benefit from this and enjoy this. Remember, please, wherever you find your podcast, to like us, subscribe to us, click download first, leave us a review. All those things both make sure you get all the updates when they come in, and it supports us in getting this podcast in front of more everyday men that could use it. Until next time, I've been Mike Campbell. Remember to build that legendary integrity. And remember, everyday men, we thrive when we are championed, when we are supported, when we are appreciated and recognized for who we choose to be in the world. Here is my invitation to both show up and be that everyday legend, and to continue to champion the everyday men in your life.